G'day, I'm Chris Rose of Rose Leather Crafting, and this is the completed workbench. Now I apologise for the long delay since the last video. I've actually had the workbench made for about a month and a half, but I've had quite a bit of leather working to do, and at the end of the day I just feel a bit exhausted and not really in the mood to sit down and edit a video. However, as the world has currently hit the pause button, I and millions of others around the world have suddenly found ourselves with quite a bit of spare time. So I figured now would be a really good time to edit the video together and put it out. But if you'd like to skip the process of how I made the workbench, feel free to go here in the timeline. But if you're interested in seeing how I made it, keep watching. I will note two things though. One, I am an absolute cricket nut. I love cricket. As such, I watch cricket all the way through the table build. This is my dog Natalie, by the way. Hello. And as such, none of the audio is usable. So what I did was edit a bunch of clips together, sped them up because there was quite a bit, and just applied a voiceover to that process to hopefully explain how I did what I did. I don't have a sound booth though, so the audio for the voiceover might not sound as great as I'd like it, but you know, it's fine. Also, I'm really happy with it. So yeah, if you enjoy what you see, please consider liking the video, subscribing, leave a comment, let me know what you think of the table or what you'd like to see next. Anyway, without further ado, here is the build of the workbench.
Alright, so I'm just using the pocket hole jig here to drill some holes in this thin bit of form ply so that I can screw it to the bottom piece here, and that helps to create the shape of the table. And after I screw it in, I sealed it with some silicone, and using my finger to smooth it in. I was really lucky I didn't have any leaks of resin. I used a lot of silicone and a lot of tape. This is a 6-litre bucket. I've just sprayed that with methylated spirits. It helps reduce the amount of bubbles that the resin creates. This is a 2-to-1 kit, and yeah, it worked really well. I had to do maybe 4 or 5 pours to get enough resin in the form, and stirring it here. I didn't show it on camera, but I added some black pigment powder to it, and I poured the resin directly into the form before I put the timber slab pieces in there, because I wanted some resin under all the wood pieces, and I figured this was the easiest way to do it, and it worked really well. Just lifting the form so that I can move all the resin around, and here I am just placing those wooden slab pieces in. As you can see here, I just had a little bit of an issue getting that wood piece right to the edge. The resin was a nice suction. I was preventing the timber going right to the edge, but I sorted it out in the end, so it was all good. And this central piece here was really heavy. I think this weighed more than I did. So I should have got some help with that, but you know, I'm stubborn. And here, just squirting some methylated spirits again to reduce the bubbles, and putting some resin saver blocks in there. That just helps to use less resin, I guess. Takes up volume. The resin's a lot more expensive than the timber, so painting the edges of the timber slab here, that helps prevent bubbles by sealing the edges of the timber. When you pour resin, the resin likes to go in the timber somewhat, and when it does that, it squeezes out air. So if you seal off the edges by doing this first, then when you pour subsequent layers, the resin can't go into the timber because you've already put resin in there, and so air won't squirt out and cause an issue later on down the track. So that's just what I'm doing here, and that worked really well. I didn't actually have any air bubbles on the top side of the table. On the bottom side it was a different story, but you know, it was the bottom, so I didn't really care. My hair is short in this video because the whole build took maybe a couple of weeks, I guess. And here's just a close-up of me painting the edges of the slab. Looks pretty messy at the moment, but you get the idea with those resin saver blocks. They worked really well. Put some resin in the central piece as well. There were some holes, and here's a nice video the methylated spirits breaking the surface tension of the bubbles. And I think in maybe the next clip, I skipped a few layers of resin pouring, and I just sort of went straight to the second last layer, I think. Yeah, this is the second last layer. You can see like the little outline of where I put the resin saver block, but I actually ran out of resin here. I initially bought, I think, 40 or 50 liters of resin and ended up using all of it. And I thought however much I bought in the first place would be enough, but turned out it was not. As you can see, there's still a little bit of room for resin. So here I'm just sanding that resin because it took me a few days to get some more resin. So I just had to sand the top of that so that the subsequent layer of resin had a bit of had a chance to grip the other resin. I added some blue and purple pigment in here. Here's just a quick clip of adding that. I mean, I'm sure you all know what it is. And I thought that pattern was really cool. And right here, I'm just routing out a channel so that I can stick an L-shaped steel bar in the bottom of the slab. I've skipped ahead a little bit. I had to take this slab to a professional to have it leveled. It was just way outside of my scope with the tools that I had. And yeah, as you can see, I just slotted that L-shaped steel in there, drilling some holes and screwing it in. I did that 4 times. So on the next shot, you'll see that I routed out 4 channels for 4 L steel brackets, and that worked really well. I haven't had the table warp or anything like that. So I was concerned because the person I bought the slab off said he'd only been drying it for a year. So obviously there's a long time for that slab to go before it's properly dry. And I'm just working on the legs here and squaring up the edges. I bought this timber from a recycled timber place and it didn't fit in the car, so I had to roughly cut it, but now I'm just neatening it up. I always like that. Oh, that's my mate Dino in the background, by the way. And I'm just hogging out the center of these legs because I wanted to create a castle joint. You can see there how I marked it out. I went and marked out all of that on the other legs and just roughly cut out as much as I could with the circular saw. This worked really well. Quite a powerful circular saw, that one. And then the next shot, the rest of the hogging out was done with the drill press with a Forstner bit, which is what you're about to see. There's something really satisfying about how this Forstner bit just shreds that timber. I mean, this timber was, really hard, very hard, dense wood, very old, very tough though. And as you can see, that's the idea with the castle joint. And now I'm just marking out the table braces. I'll call them braces. Sort of getting rid of half the width of the brace, and so that I can sort of crisscross that with another brace. Just roughly hogging that out with a bandsaw. That blade is probably the bluntest blade I've ever used on a bandsaw. Some percussive persuasion here with the chisel, and there's a bit more percussive persuasion later on in the video as well. I always enjoy a bit of percussive persuasion. I like that term if you haven't noticed. So here I am just fitting the braces just to see if I've got everything right. Nice bit of percussive persuasion. This was really fun. Like I thought that I would have a lot more trouble than what I did with this particular process, but everything actually went smoother than what I thought it would. Some of those brace pieces were a bit loose in the castle joint for the legs. I made the castle joints a bit wider on some and a bit skinnier on others, so sometimes I had to bash it in, as you can see here, and other times it just slotted in. And just testing out if it could hold my weight, which it could. I recommend not doing that, but you know. And here I am working on the bottom shelf, I guess. Just using my nail gun, which is really cool. It's an electric nail gun, battery operated, and that worked really well. I didn't really need to put in these small sections here, but I had a fair bit of timber left over because I bought too much, so I thought, why not? Can't hurt. Probably not the safest way to handle a nail gun with my hands so close to it, but I still have 10 fingers with no holes in them, so I think I'm doing okay. And I cut the bottom shelf platform off camera. I forgot to record it. And here I'm just screwing in the legs to the top brace. It's only a very minor brace, but I figured with all of the other bits of timber that are going to be stuck to this table, it's going to be pretty sturdy anyway. And just screwing in the bottom platform to the braces. And essentially doing the same thing for the top of the workbench that I did for the bottom of the workbench. I put one more brace on the top than I did on the bottom. Again, I bought too much timber, but that's all right. I skipped over most of these bits here. I just didn't record that. I figured I'd record the back end. Oh, this was so dumb of me. I shouldn't have done this by myself. I really could have hurt my back. That tabletop was so heavy. I absolutely should have got some help with that, and my stubborn self, I was just so stupid. And this is the fun bit, the sanding. It's starting to look more and more like a workbench, which I'm really happy with. Sanding took a really, really long time. I sanded from 60 grit, I think, all the way up to 3000 grit wet and dry, which is what this is. And that's wet sanding as well, so just spraying some water and sanding. And here I'm finishing it off by polishing it with some wax cream polish. I didn't bother with like a poly finish or anything like that because it's a workbench. It's going to get used and abused, and I don't really care about that. It's going to be covered by a cutting mat most of the time anyway. You can see the shine came out really, really nice. And yeah, this is a cool shot. I wanted to demonstrate what the wax cream polish was doing to the table. So you can see it looks a little bit dull, but this wax cream polish brings out a really, really nice shine. And this is actually the last shot before the, I guess, the beauty shots. Not that there's too many of those, but you know. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the build process, and like and subscribe and leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Thank you very much. This clip's going on longer than I thought it would, so I've just got to sort of make up stuff. No, I'm done now. Thank you, everyone.